Hello, my name is Portia Crawford, and I'm a student at UAMS. I am currently pursuing my master's in public health with an emphasis in environmental and occupational health. And the title of my presentation is called A Crash Course in Public Health Projects and OPOs. And OPOs meaning organ procurement organizations. This slide just provides a brief overview of what will be discussed during this presentation. The narrative review that I have is a lot more detailed, but I'll just hit on the highlights of each one of these topics with the introduction. That's just introducing the College of Public Health at UAMS, as well as Aurora, which is the organ procurement organization. It'll touch also on the goal of the directed study course that I was enrolled in. The literature review will sum up some findings that shows a need and why this is a public health matter. My methodology throughout this course, and which led to my results with creating a mock APE template, as well as just a take-home message overall to wrap up the things discussed in this presentation. Most people don't think about it, but public health can be seen all around us. It is in everything that we do and know without even, thinking about it. Just think, when you adjust the filters on your phone from day to night, or you filter blue light because, your eyes are sensitive, etc., that's a form of incorporating public health. When you put on your seatbelt, not only because you don't want to get a ticket, but because you want to make sure that you're safe if you were to get in an accident, and the passengers in your car, they're safe, nobody wants to be in danger. So that's a form of public health as well. And so public health itself, it is the science and art of protecting, preventing, improving, and promoting communities' health via research, service, and education. And at UAMS, the College of Public Health encompasses these areas and radiates social justice throughout Arkansas communities. And one of the most popular programs within the college is the Master of Public Health, where there are 6 available concentration tracks. Aurora, the Arkansas Regional Organ Recovery Agency, is a nonprofit accredited organ procurement organization for Arkansans, where their mission is to restore lives through the recovery of organs and tissues. And because of their, vast partnerships, they maximize the opportunity for tissue and organ donation and provide service to the public through life-saving and life-restoring transplantations. And because of this, when you put Aurora together with UAMS, this newfound preceptorship relationship allows students to not only complete their experience projects and capstones, which is the whole, one of the overarching goals of this directed study course, but it expands their awareness and helps them actually work on real world issues and to provide that type of practicality to what's going on around them. And between both organizations, between the students at UAMS within the College of Public Health and those Aurora employees, that may be working with students, it builds better relationships. It builds opportunities for networking. UAMS, we have our own body, of contacts and agencies and entities that we may work with that may be of justice to Aurora and what they may have going on and other ideas. It does the same for those students as well, introduces them to another professional organization as well. And two, one thing I definitely want to hit here, besides the student experience projects, we're also, addressing and focusing on, facts versus myths. So it may not be necessarily outlined as, okay, this is the myth and this is the fact. However, by still providing that education and having that topic, having that health issue to be addressed, you are directly or indirectly, depending on your approach, addressing and dispelling that misinformation, because you don't want people making ill-informed decisions based on, ideas or thought processes that they may have grown up with. I, for one, was one of those people who had, myths that I've heard of that always stuck with me. So this is an opportunity to also, educate those who may also be in that mindset as well. So, and I think too, one of the most important when I was doing this and I thought about it is our IPE curriculum. Now, every student has to complete an IPE pillar and curriculum, and so I was like, this is a beautiful process because the IPE framework, which is the interprofessional education framework, this partnership falls under that because we're fostering research and scholarship, collaborative practice development, faculty development, and it has a quadruple aim focused curriculum. So, and it just, even with all this together, it has the potential to segue into maybe establishing coursework for our dual degree students, such as those in the College of Medicine, when it may comes to ethics or death and dying, etc. So they can be definitely successful in their own right, depending upon the approach, each student takes to it. So one of the things that this newfound relationship and that this directed study course is highlighting is that there's an imbalance between supply and demand that is ongoing around the organ donation community and the number of people that we have registered as organ donors. According to Aurora, there are currently over 114,000 people in need of life-saving organ transplants, with only 45% of people in the U.S. being registered organ donors. And so it's like it's addressing those topics we talked about: health disparities, rural communities. What is this supply and demand? How is it ongoing? What's the underlying issues? And we know when it comes to like rural communities or, health disparities, a lot of the times it's, availability to healthy foods, access and quality of care, environmental exposures or occupational exposures that can have a bearing on a person's health as to why they need an organ. But what about, studies that reflect social determinants, and so, or socioeconomic studies. So with this study here, socioeconomic variables explain rural disparities in U.S. mortality rates, implications for rural health research and policy. Pioneered the role of social determinants on rural mortality disparities. So the purpose of the study was to assess if controlling for socioeconomic variables had any significance on the rural mortality disparity. So it was found that when controlled, percent in poverty and median income decreased 50% to 2% variation in age-adjusted premature mortality rates. And my narrative review, it'll go in a little more detail about that. But one of the things I wanted to highlight here is that it shows the significance of socioeconomic variables within the population. And maybe, we need to take a different approach to assessing health outcomes or the way interventions are created. And so, how does something like this translate into policy? And so when it comes to policy, you can look at it like, well, we have education, we have income. We have to take all those things into accountability, when it comes to learning people or seeing whether somebody is a donor or not, what occupation do they have, what, do they have any wealth, etc. And so first person authorization and donor registries just aren't enough. And studies such as using online communication skills training to increase organ donation authorization it's a great deal because a lot of the times, if a person isn't authorized or doesn't have first person authorization, meaning like it's not, on their license, or, can be looked up from the DMV, etc. Sometimes families have to make these decisions. And so the purpose of this study was to evaluate the execution and effectiveness of OPO requester training. And the main goal here was to increase authorization rates. So, with the amount of historical mistrust and people receiving their information from social media or word of mouth, like the OPO staff has the ability to relate to these people of different demographics. Like sometimes the decision of what a person does, or how a person feels or family decides, it rests upon them. And so the results had a couple different groups, and one of the things I wanted to highlight here was that there was a group that was doing great and they stayed within their area, which goes to show they were doing something right. And then one group went from 46% to a 73% authorization rate. So that shows a massive increase. And the importance here is like mastery of concepts, such as knowing the donation process and what does it mean between, cardiac death or brain death. So a person understands what's going on with their family member, and they can feel more at ease at making those hard decisions, that also too, that learning decay from those people who work, if they're not always brushed up on their skills, sometimes people get complacent and they need those refresher courses and refresher training. And also too, that confidence, that ability to feel comfortable in knowing in what you're talking about. Because if families or individuals feel as though a person is not confident in their job, it's going to make them skeptical and not feel okay with making such a big decision. And also foster report. You can't rush the process. You have to be sensitive to people's needs. They have to know that you understand and that you empathize with them as well. Taking the time out to answer those questions and to be patient with them as they make, those type of decisions can affect authorization rates and that supply and demand that we talked about as well. The first part of the directed study course was to hone in on what ideas, topics, or concepts did Aurora want to address. So I scheduled and conducted Zoom meetings among myself, Aurora's key team members such as the Director of Donation Development, Director of Quality Systems, and Donation Report Data Analyst, my faculty overseer, my program director, and the COPH Public Health Practice Coordinator. And so starting with the initial meeting, the goal was to assess what are the needs of Aurora. What problems do we want to address? What is the health issue? Like, what concepts do we want to look at? By the second to last meeting, we were able to flush those down to the top priority areas. However, those lists of other areas that they want to explore are still there. So for future projects, say if the high need areas get addressed first, there's still a list of other things that can be, done and reflected on as an ongoing series. So it's still vital work. And by the time we got to the last outline, it served as a preliminary presentation for the construction of the narrative review to make sure that all things were being addressed. As far as public health information, a PowerPoint was sent out to the members of Aurora to give them an idea of what public health is, and more specifically, how does it relate to the 6 disciplines at UAMS. So basically, just providing some knowledge and a little bit of education on how those topics were going to align to the disciplines and concentrations within our college. And basically, what does that look like? What does that translate to? Like, how can I take something like say, authorization rates and apply it to public health? Or how can I take death certificates and apply it to public health or a data set, etc.? And throughout this process, I consulted with my faculty overseer and program director to discuss the project guidelines, strategies, development, and progress. So as a result of those meetings and coming up with those outlines, etc., I was able to create a mock example for future student experience projects. So here I just showcase one of them using the Department of Health Policy and Management, which is one of our disciplines within the college. However, in the narrative review, I do provide an example for all 6 concentrations. So one type of example using the topics, concepts, or ideas that was discussed during the Zoom meetings, and it was put in a format, the APE manual style format that students will be introduced to first, which is also why I decided to use this format instead of like an ILE format or anything any different, because students are introduced to this style first. And a lot of times students use their ILE as an extension of their APE. So if they really understand and perfect what's going on within their APE, then once they get to the ILE section, then it's a lot easier to grasp, to bring together more than one concept and have a like multidisciplinary approach to everything. These same topics and structures can be used also for those who are considering or pursuing their doctoral degrees as well, so for their practicums and capstone projects as well. So here, focusing on health policy and management and the health issue of an effective approach process, knowing Aurora's process without haste and conversing with the donor's family. So one of the issues can be, oh, everything is so rushed, we're missing steps. How do we get those authorization rates up? Like, how do we make it better? And that's a policy issue, that is training, that's a policy thing. So I felt like, okay, that could fall underneath there. And so the title could be the difference between yes or no, authorization rates and communicating effectively. And so essentially here, this title was saying, hey, we got to look at what's going on, or we got to look at our training, or we got to look at our approach process. We got to know we can't be haste. We got to know that these people need sensitivity. They need empathy. We need to know our key skills, or more about the donation process, or more about, how can we explain to them, because it can make a difference in between us having authorization and not. So that can be an example of a project. And as far as like who could be the site preceptor, that can go back to a key team member, such as the director of quality systems, for example. And as far as the APE faculty advisor, the student, they choose that person that's at UAMS, that's within the College of Public Health. So it could be someone in health policy and management, someone that they already have a rapport with, who they're familiar with, etc. So although each entity has their own mission statement, they both provide and embody public health in their own unique way. They still have their science and art of protecting, preventing, improving, and promoting communities' health via education, research, and service. The newfound relationship between UAMS, College of Public Health, and Aurora is innovative. It serves as a trailblazer for many other projects to come, and agencies alike to expand their partnerships with colleges or programs of public health. These new set of eyes that each group brings, it helps to raise knowledge and foster awareness by sharing their own expertise. And as I mentioned before, it creates new opportunities and benefits for both parties, whether it's someone who's wanting to expand their education within the Aurora community, or a student who would like, to seek employment through Aurora. The possibilities are endless. And one thing about the student projects, experience projects, is that, it allows students to be prepared for real world practicality and involvement. It enhances students' performance dimensions while also servicing the organization with a public health application to their problems or focus that's to be addressed. So, all in all, this is just the take home message from this presentation. We're putting everything together from this directed study course, and I'm glad I had the opportunity to showcase this and bring this together and show this in a way that could be understood for both organizations and what this is all about. Thank you. And here are my references.